Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished, respected, and senior professional from Warsaw, Poland, Mr. Chris Skinner. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Chris is a commentator. He's CEO of the Finanser, and he's a best-selling author. He's known as one of the most influential people in technology. He's the non-executive director of 11:FS. I hope I have the name right. He's an author of 14 books. He's also a successful children's author with a series focused upon Captain Cake and Candy Crew. So, Chris, you seem to have had a very interesting journey. Let's talk a little bit about your own journey before we come to the Finanser.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a long and interesting career, primarily in technology and financial services, working with some big companies in mainly American companies, but leading their charge into banking and finance in Europe. And then I was made redundant in 2002. And started some hobbies whilst looking for a proper job. And then my hobbies became my job.
Okay, that's fantastic. And is that what led you to the Finanser?
It is, in that I was writing articles for, as a freelance, various research companies, analyzing what was happening in technology and financial services and regulations. And then someone said, "Oh, you should start blogging," back in 2007. And me being me, because I'm a bit nerdy, I started blogging on the 1st of February 2007 and have blogged every single working day ever since.
Incredible.
So 15 years worth of blogs became the books that you referred to, of which the most recent one is Digital for Good.
Wow. So tell me a little bit more about the Finanser, and I like the spelling FINANSER.
Yeah, it was kind of accidental in that one of my publishers back in 2007 had created a website which was meant to be bringing together all their authors in financial services. And they called it the Finanser with an S, to mean the financial services portal. It didn't work out, and so I said, "Well, look, can I have that?" And they said yes. And so that became my platform for creating a voice, which many people now say is a influencer. I'm not sure what I am, but I'm just a guy who talks about what I think about financial services, technology, and sometimes the economy and politicians.
Oh, wow. Okay. So for a lot of my young viewers and listeners, I'm going to ask you one of the very basic questions. What is FinTech and why is the sector so hot today?
Well, we call it FinTech, and basically, as I said earlier, I've worked in financial services and technology my whole life. But the difference between financial services and technology is that when they became integrated, it was called FinTech. And that was when cloud computing came along, in that around the mid 2000s, FinTechs began to become hot because they could start with almost zero customers and capital using cloud computing and smartphone apps and grow very quickly from bootstrapping into multi-million or even billion-dollar companies. And it's been really hot until the end of 2021. Last year, the investments in FinTech were greater than ever before. You get various figures, but let's say $200 billion as a guide, amongst 136 unicorns, which are billion-dollar FinTech startups, beginning in the 2000s and onwards. This year it's been harder, and so my favorite FinTech is Stripe, for example, which is one of the largest FinTechs, providing merchant checkout online in a very simple way through an API, an application programming interface code. Last year valued at 95 billion, this year 75 billion.
Okay.
Klarna was valued at 45 billion last year, this year 8 billion.
Mm.
And so what we're seeing is a big shakeout this year in that the sector for the first time is going through a recession.
Mm.
And that's challenging many of these 26,000 fintech startup companies.
Mm.
But there will be great survivors, just as we saw in 1999, 2000 with the internet boom and bust. If you can remember that far back,
Yep.
a lot of people said that Amazon wouldn't survive, and
Mm.
yet today you wouldn't actually have believed that someone would have said that.
Mm. Absolutely. In fact, I remember it rather well. I lost a serious amount of money on my own during that period. But you mentioned about this shakeout that's coming in fintech or has started in fintech. Is it just valuations, or is the entire paradigm for fintech moving into something different altogether?
Well, I think there's a number of things happening, and one of the things I've said for some time is that by the end of this decade, we won't even refer to fintech. It's just finance using technology.
Correct.
And what we're going to see, particularly in the next couple of years, is a lot of the startups being acquired by traditional banks.
Mm-hmm.
It was a theme at Money 2020 in Las Vegas this year, which is one of the big fintech conferences, that many of them were holding out their begging bowls saying, please buy us.
Mm.
Not quite that obviously, but that was something that I recognized as, many of the startup fintech community are on a cash burn and they don't have the runway to survive.
Mm.
So they either need another series funding round, of which is quite difficult to get the investment right now because the VCs and private equity have changed their positions,
Mm.
or you get acquired and sold to a bank. And so I think there'll be a lot of mergers and acquisitions during 2023
Mm.
with some significant names, and probably a lot of the traditional financial community buying these companies, if for nothing else, to get their talent
Mm.
and some of their customers. But on the converse, those that do have the capital,
Mm.
and there are some, not that many, but there are
Mm.
some fintech companies that have the capital, that they will be buying their competition.
Mm.
They will be buying the low hanging fruit, and
Mm.
so by 2025 we're going to see probably 50 or more fintech giants and thousands of fintech skeletons.
Mm. Very interesting. And as someone who is constantly scanning the horizon and looking at so many different countries and so many different trends, what would you say are some of the latest trends in the global digital economy?
Well, the main thing I seem to be talking about all the time right now is central bank digital currencies
Mm.
and cryptocurrencies. And the reason is that I think there's a huge friction and battle between centralized finance,
Mm.
uh, and I would say versus, but I think it's and decentralized finance. I don't think it's one or the other. I think we'll have both.
Mm.
And it's the customer's choice as to which they believe is the right choice.
Mm.
So we're going to be using mainly government currencies in
Mm.
day-to-day transactions, buying and selling goods, but we'll probably be using decentralized currencies in online and mobile transactions
Mm.
and for savings and investment.
Mm.
Um, and the key about this is there's a control mechanism that's in the target sites of the people.
Mm.
And this is the control mechanism of governments and central banks
Mm.
versus the people's desire to be able to trade, transact, and communicate freely
Mm.
through the network. And one of the things that I bring up quite often as a slide is that the world doesn't actually have any borders.
Mm.
We created them.
Mm.
That they are fictional, and we can recreate those borders. In the 17th century, Poland was the biggest country in Europe,
Mm.
and most of Central and Eastern Europe was part of Poland, including most of Western Russia, for
Mm.
example.
Mm.
That disappeared due to wars,
Mm.
and then the borders were rewritten due to wars. And the war at the moment is over those borders through the network.
Correct.
And that's what I think is the biggest trend in the next few years, which is, can the network rewrite the borders?
Hmm. And you spoke about a little bit about crypto and a little bit about the digital currencies, the government digital currencies, and even a very conservative government like India has announced its own digital rupee. Um, what do you think the government-sponsored digital currencies will do to crypto? Because crypto was being used for a lot of online transactions, which now government saying you can use using the digital dollar or digital euro or digital rupee.
Well, you kind of have three groups of people. You have those who are really into technology,
Mhm.
and they're probably most likely users to be into cryptocurrencies.
Mm.
You have the mainstream population who just want to get on with their lives and um, I won't say trust, but accept government. And so they will use the digital rupee and the physical rupee. And actually, the third group, which are the people that are not even on the network, and therefore they have to have a physical,
Right.
form of value transfer, cash, which is the physical rupee.
Mm.
Um, and it's interesting, particularly with it in India, for example, when Modi did the outlawing of the high value currencies,
Mm.
and suddenly people were bereft of cash
Mm.
because those notes were just outlawed pretty
Correct.
much overnight,
Mm.
which I thought was quite shocking.
Mhm.
But you rebalance, and so I think India's done an absolutely fantastic job of using digitalization to to recreate the country,
Mm.
um, near enough, between Aadhaar and the unified payments interface and the India stack
Yeah.
and the India chain using
Mm.
blockchain.
Mm.
The country is doing through the government an amazing job of digitalizing India. But as I
Absolutely.
say, you're going to have people who are off the network,
Mm.
and how do you bring those into the network?
Correct.
And then you have people who can leverage the network because they're technology nerds or
Mm.
geeks or whatever you want to call them,
Mm.
who probably will be ignoring the rupee and using Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies.
Correct.
And so there's quite an extreme there between the mainstream and the extreme.
Well said, and thank you for a great response. So, Chris, let me just move on to another part of when I was reading about you. Uh, you see trends early, you understand their potential, and you help others do the same. Help me understand this part of what you are doing with an example or an anecdote.
Well, it all started many years ago, and I did a presentation. At the time, I was focused on the insurance industry, and
Mhm.
I'd actually taken a post master's degree in insurance,
Mm.
and was showing my great knowledge of the industry. And the feedback forms came back, and one said, "Tell me something that I don't know."
Mm.
And I realized I was talking about the past and present,
Mm.
and the future is the only thing we don't know. So
Mm.
that switched me on to always looking into the future and always being looking for what's next rather than what's today.
Mm.
And I think that's a really important thing, which is the only thing we can change is the future. We can't change today or yesterday.
Mm.
We can change tomorrow. And I don't call myself a futurist
Mhm.
because to me that gets you into some conversations that are too far out,
Mm.
like how will we engage with aliens,
Mm.
with
Mm.
a new language or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I call myself a commercial strategist,
Okay.
which is I'm looking at the trends in business with technology
Mm.
in the financial services industry, which is my
Mm.
area, and thinking what's going to be the best thing to invest in tomorrow.
Mm.
And right now, if you ask me the question, which I know you would do, if is what's the next best thing to invest in tomorrow, I'll
Mm.
probably say, if you've got a long-term view,
Mm.
quantum computing.
Okay. Wow. And how does one go and invest in quantum computing?
Well, there's a number of companies involved in quantum.
Hmm.
Um, Research the marketplace. And bear in mind that if you're investing in something that's nascent, as in very early days,
Hmm.
there's going to be dropouts, there's going to be bankruptcies.
Hmm.
But if you're early in the game, a little bit like if you were investing in Apple in 1990, then
Hmm.
you'll be a millionaire in 2020, or
Hmm.
in this case, 2050.
Amazing. And again, a basic question for a lot of my viewers and listeners: what is quantum computing?
Oh, it's the next generation of systems. And so today we work on binary, which is ones and zeros. And that's effectively everything that we do in
Hmm.
the on the internet, in cloud computing,
Hmm.
on the phone is coded into ones and zeros,
Hmm.
which represent the code
Correct.
that generates the functions that we use. We
Hmm.
don't see those because we deal more with the layers of software on top of that
Hmm.
code.
Hmm.
Um, with quantum computing, there is no one or zero. There's basically a state where the system generates its code and the
Hmm.
background in real time in a state that represents what's happening at that time
Hmm.
in what's equivalent to what we call today multi-parallel processing, which is where there's huge numbers of processors, but this time there's millions of them.
Hmm.
Um, and if you want to research it, because I find it very confusing, to be honest, I don't quite understand myself quantum
Hmm.
computing,
Hmm.
but I always go back to Schrodinger's cat,
Hmm.
which is where the idea came from in many ways.
Okay.
So the idea of Schrodinger's cat is if you put a cat in a box
Hmm.
and in put something in, some gas in the box, for example, the cat could be dead or alive. You
Hmm.
don't know whether it's dead or alive.
Hmm.
And that's the idea of quantum, which is you don't know whether it's a one or a zero until the code lands. And
Oh.
then the code decides whether it's a one or a zero. You don't.
Hmm. I
It,
well, I
as
know
I say,
even
it's confusing.
I know
But
even lesser than you do on quantum computing, but I'm
well,
assuming a lot of this
I
probably be
think
used.
I think the core point about quantum, um, even though I'm saying that I don't understand the depths of it, is that what it allows us to do is to process 1,000 or 1,000,000 more transactions than we can today
Hmm.
for 1,000 or 1,000,000 rupees less than the cost today.
Very
So
interesting.
massive volume scalability
Hmm.
for very small cost.
Hmm. And would you say a lot of quantum computing will be behind a lot of the use of artificial intelligence? Because that's where a 1010 may not be the answer every time.
Well, if we want to get to the stage of the singularity, which is what Ray Kurzweil coined as a phrase, another futurist,
Hmm.
um, the singularity is when technology gets to be better than humanity in terms of its
Hmm.
capabilities of knowledge and response.
Hmm.
And it's also when we get to the stage that you wouldn't be able to recognize a computer from a human
Hmm.
if we build robots that look human, for example.
Hmm.
And so what you end up with between artificial intelligence and quantum computing is massive scale, very low cost robotics and intelligence
Hmm.
that can serve humanity.
Hmm.
And some would say replace humanity.
Hmm.
But the latter point is actually more the Hollywood movie or the Bollywood movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's the scaremongering of technology
Hmm.
because a lot of people are scared of change, they're scared of technology, and I'm not. I actually think technology is fantastic, and I think it will make our lives better. And
Absolutely.
if computers can, through robotics, AI, and quantum computing, replace humans in mundane jobs, then
Hmm.
we're left to do fun jobs like writing books or painting or creating music and songs or doing the things that we love to do.
Well said. Well said. So, Chris, I'm now going to move to your books and your most recent books, Digital for Good. Before I ask you the question, is it available on Amazon?
Oh yeah, it's
Okay.
available worldwide on Amazon, and also on what's called the Book Depository,
Okay.
which I also use quite a lot because they give free shipping worldwide.
Okay. So I'm asking all my viewers to go and check out your book. I will do so myself. But in the book, you write about how technology and finance can work together to address the environmental and social issues. And the world is facing a lot of social issues and a lot of environmental issues. Please help me understand this with an example.
Well, the theme of the newest book is different to my previous ones, because the previous ones tend to be case studies that I've written and my own opinions and thoughts. Whereas this one is actually one where the premise that I started with is, can we use technology and finance to make the world a better place? And then I thought, if I say that, it sounds a bit preachy. So I reached out to friends around the world and ended up with over 20 contributors to the book from 5 continents.
Okay.
Who were writing their own thought pieces around these themes. And I guess the themes are focused upon ESG, environmental, social governance aspects, but also on what is the purpose of banking? What is it there for? And why hasn't it made the world a better place? And the answer to that is obviously because it's shareholder focused. What happens if we shift to being stakeholder focused? And what if banks had a more higher purpose and moral compass and ethical stance than they have today, which would redress the issues that we had in the 2000s with the financial collapse in Europe and America? And an example of this is, there's many, but there's a couple of favorites. My favorite probably is Ant Group in China, which operate Alipay. And that's the major payment system in China, processing trillions of dollars a year today. And they created a program about 5 years ago called Ant Forest. And so every time someone using Alipay spends money, they get a recognition and points in a game called Ant Forest of whether that was a green payment or a brown payment or in between, in terms of the carbon emissions and the impact on the environment of that payment. By illustration, if you take a taxi or refill your car with gas, then those are viewed as brown payments. Whereas if you buy a bicycle or walk to work, that can be recognized as a green payment. And on top of that, you can compete with your friends. So it's a multiplayer game and steal points off your friends. And what the points make, they basically make trees. And so every time you get to, let's say, 100 points, Alipay plants a tree in an area that needs more oxygen, a desert or an area that's been deforested. And now they have 800 million people playing this game. Wow. It's probably even more, but so many people. And it's reducing carbon emissions across China by around 5% per year. And so it's combining the understanding of how you pay and how you use money and finance with technology to make the world a better place. And I've seen that idea replicated across the world in other institutions, but Alipay was the start of it.
Amazing. And my last question to you, Chris, and I come to your book book series focused on children. From the world of finance, technology, data, crypto, digital, you're now a successful children's author. Tell me 2 different things. One is, what made you write for children? And what is the focus of these books, or who are the focus of these books other than, of course, children?
So I probably look a little bit more grandfatherly than fatherly, but I'm very lucky in that late in life, I found a fantastic lady who's now my wife. And we have 2 children, Freddie and Eddie, twin boys who are 6. But during the pandemic and the lockdown, they were 4. And I was reading to them every night, and I just got bored reading to them. And so one night we were chatting, and I said, I'll make up a story, and it's about Captain Cake, which is the Victoria sponge cake that comes to life thanks to General Rock's laser gun.
Oh.
But equally, there's Lieutenant Chocolate, Sergeant Jelly, and Private Potato.
Mm.
And Private Potato is the only one who doesn't have superpowers, but she's the one who is the only one who understands how to fly the ship and repair the ship, which
Okay.
is the sweet candy.
Mm.
So they fly through space to boldly go where no sweet has gone before, which kind of gives you an idea as to where it's related to.
Okay.
But I was amused because there's now 5 books. You can find them on CaptainCake.com.
Mm.
But the 4th book is the Captain Cake versus the Rotten Tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
In the boys' school, they said they love this book because the Rotten Tomatoes are spraying goo everywhere that looks like poo. It's not meant to be like that, but
I know.
kids love it.
I know. I know. How interesting. And on that note, Chris, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your own journey, about how you started the Finanser. Thank you for talking to me about FinTech, about crypto, about digital currency, about how you are able to see trends so quickly and so easily, about what you see as the future of digital, about quantum computing, about your book, Digital for Good, and finally about Captain Cake. Thank you again, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.